everyone, Scrivener here. It's been a few weeks since we last posted a video and I made a post on our community tab about that. We basically didn't feel like the content that we had lined up was really the right tone. It just didn't feel right to post the next installment of our chapter by chapter reading of Twilight. So we didn't. It doesn't really need to be said, but Paige and I have always supported Black Lives Matter. This is not a new thing for us. We support the people who are protesting. We are sending them our money. But today I have something kind of fun. Y'all might remember that I did a video a couple months ago about some of the books that I had read at the beginning of this year and that I was really enjoying and that I'd really loved. One of those books was a romance novel called Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, who is a Black disabled British woman. I basically wrote that whole video so that I could just gush about how much I loved that one book. Basically, as soon as I finished Get a Life, Chloe Brown, I knew that it was one of my all-time favorite books. And that's kind of a big deal. Talia Hibbert's publicist reached out to me on Instagram. She'd seen the video. She wanted to know if I was interested in receiving a copy of the follow-up, Take a Hint, Dani Brown, and reviewing it for the channel. And so I absolutely said yes. This has actually never happened before. This is the very first time that we've ever received something for free to review it. I probably would have reviewed it anyway, but I also ended up purchasing the audiobook through Libro FM because I wanted to support Talia Hibbert anyway, because I really like her books. I'm making the switch from Audible to Libro FM. I got all quiet because my Alexa is still plugged in and I'm like, Jeff Bezos is listening. I'm gonna go unplug it. Okay. And I just wanted to disclose that because, it's something I should disclose that, I got this for free. This would be the same review that I would be giving if I had purchased the book myself, but I also kind of did because I bought the audiobook, so. And the publicist that I spoke with was very nice and very polite and gave no indication that she would want me to do anything else. Wonderful experience. Thank you so much. It's kind of it makes me so happy that this is a thing that happened. So I've got thoughts. Let's get started. The first thing I want to talk about is the audiobook because my feelings about the audiobook obviously have nothing whatsoever to do with Talia Hibbert's actual writing. I was kind of disappointed in the audiobook and I ultimately wouldn't recommend it. Get a Life, Chloe Brown, one of the things that I really loved about it was that I wholeheartedly loved the audiobook. That was one of my selling points for why you should read it because it was so good. This one was just okay. And to be fair, I think part of that is because Adjoa Andoh read the first one. She read Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Andoh not only had really fantastic voices that were easily distinguishable from each other, that brought the characters to life. Hibbert's particular wit and joke style was so efficiently and genuinely delivered by Andoh. It was perfect. I don't think you can get better than her for Hibbert's work, or at least for this particular series. At first I didn't know that it was going to be a different reader because, Andoh already had voices that had been seared into my brain. And so I was a little surprised when we had somebody different, but I understand why that would be the case. Different voice, different reader. But ultimately, the performance didn't really click with me. I'm not at all saying that the reader herself was bad or that, she just can't read audiobooks. That's not it at all. The way that this was read, I don't think really did the story and the writing justice in the way that Adjoa Andoh absolutely did. I know that that is a personal thing. On a slightly more objective technical level, there is a sentence that uses the word cis-sexist, and the audiobook reader mispronounced it. She pronounced it as cis-exist, so two separate words. And that particular pronunciation leads me to believe that neither she nor the producers knew what the word was and that nobody bothered to look it up. It was a very odd mistake and it was quite jarring. There's not really any excuse. Cis-sexist is not a very difficult word. If you have the option between reading the hard copy and the audiobook, I would absolutely recommend that you just read the physical book instead of listening to the audiobook. I still liked her voice. I would have preferred a different direction for this particular recording, given how great I thought the first one was. That being said, let's move on to the actual content of the book. I turned the AC off so that there would be no sound. Overall, I really enjoyed the book. This is the third book that I've read of Talia Hibbert's, and I just really enjoy her romance novels. You can feel the warmth that Hibbert has for people in general in her stories, and that's something that's really comforting and really lovely. And especially when you get into things like, you know, race and gender and sexuality, that very clearly like accepting and loving, glowing way that she talks about people and that she writes people is very wonderful. I just love it, and I can't wait to read more of her books. If you're a woman who is attracted to men, or if you're just a person who is attracted to men and has enjoyed romance novels in the past, there's absolutely no reason not to read Talia Hibbert. She is inclusive and wonderful and has good, important things to say about relationships that you need to hear. So, yeah. I had a lot of things about this book that I really loved, and I had a couple of issues with it that were kind of big things, I'm not gonna lie. Oh my god, I just realized that I never actually said what the book is about. Here's what the book is about. Danica, or Dani Brown, is a 27-year-old black bisexual literature professor who is also studying to get her PhD. I can say that word if I really think about it. She's a literature professor who is studying to get her PhD, just recently gotten out of a fling with somebody where they wanted to be in a relationship with her and she didn't want that because she doesn't really want to be in a relationship with anybody. So she is looking for a new person to have sex with on the regular and also be friends with. Yeah. And the universe delivers her Zafir Ansari, ex-professional rugby player, but is now a security guard at the university where Danica works. They have a very flirtatious kind of workplace friendship. There's an incident at the beginning of the book wherein Zafir carries Danica out of the building after she gets trapped in an elevator during some kind of emergency drill, and somebody posts a video of him carrying her. This video goes viral. The publicity that Zafir gets from this viral video is really helping bolster his sports charity. So they start fake dating, and Dani is also very much like, I wanna have sex with you, so let's do that too. Danica and Zafir both go by Dani and Zaf, so I'll be referring to them with both names throughout this video. I do also just want to say that Get a Life Chloe Brown was a very unusual circumstance of me reading a book and immediately loving it so much that I knew it was a favorite. I went into this book knowing that that was very unlikely to happen, so I don't have like sequel disappointment or anything like that because I knew it was not going to be the same book. First big pro, I absolutely love Zafir. I just really love the way that Hibbert has written the male romantic leads in both of the Brown Sisters series. It's a way for her to explore and dismantle toxic masculinity, which is a thing that I think a lot of romance novelists are doing right now. At the same time, I think that there's this misconception that to talk about and ultimately critique toxic masculinity, that you have to write a certain type of like not super masculine like male lead. And Talia Hibbert's like, haha, that's funny. In both of the Brown Sisters books, we have Zafir in this one and we have Red in the first one. Both of them are working through some real issues. And yet both of them are very masculine. She critiques toxic masculinity by writing characters where it's clear that toxicity is not inherent in masculinity. She's very good at divorcing those two ideas, and being numb or aloof or a jerk does not make you masculine. And I still read romance novels where we get male characters who are like, I'm a manly man and I can't talk about my emotions. real attractive. I felt like I really knew Zafir. I knew about his family, I knew about his best friend, I knew his routine, I understood why he acted the way he did, and ultimately, when you know characters in a book really, really well, it just means that you're very, very primed to understand and enjoy the story in a way that you can't if you can't connect with the characters. I've always felt like I have a real sense of who her characters are long after I finish her books. Unfortunately, and I feel really bad saying this, Danica Brown is not one of those characters. We're told so many things about who Danica Brown is, but we never really get to see those things for ourselves. And that's really disappointing given how interesting she sounds. Danica Brown is a Black bisexual witch who is studying race and gender post-slavery for her PhD. That's really interesting. And yet, there are so few instances where we actually get to see any of that in action. And it was just really surprising because this wasn't an issue that has come up at all with any of the other characters in the books that I've read. I'll give a few examples. Danica is preparing for a symposium in which she is going to appear on a panel with an idol of hers, one of the only Black female professors in the United Kingdom. Dani really looks up to her. We know very little about what the symposium is really about. We see Dani preparing for it, and when I say that, I mean that she talks about how, you know, she spends hours preparing post-it notes and research topics and all of this other stuff, but we never ever hear the name of a single book or an idea of what she's going to talk about during the symposium. She never really talks about her work at all. The first time that we ever actually learn about what specifically she studies is when Zafir says it. It's a while before we get to that point, and it just felt very unusual. I really hate to say it because it's obviously a pretty big issue, but I really felt like I didn't know who Danica was by the end of the book, except that, you know, she had a lot of emotional issues that were very similar to things that I've gone through. That very much resonated with me, but the thing is that I wanted to know more about her passions. Part of that might have been intentional because she does mention several times that past partners have told her, I'm not interested in your work, but when we're inside her own head so much of the book, there's absolutely no reason that we shouldn't be getting some of that. I'm not saying that I expected Talia Hibbert to give me a reading list of real actual, you know, books, but I felt like ultimately the lack of information that we got about that just didn't cement Dani as a real character in my mind. Certainly not in the way that Zafir and other characters were. I think a good example for me to kind of compare this to is Chloe in the first book. Chloe, we know, is a disabled, chronically ill woman who very much loves her work, and we know that her work is marketing and building websites and doing social media, and we know that because we see it and because she talks about it, not because we are just told that she does it. And we also know that she's disabled because that is a really big part of her identity. We see her taking medications. She talks about her limitations, the ways that personally her disability have impacted her ability to form relationships with people because people are ableist. Chloe is such a defined character because we don't just hear about her interests, she shows them to us. Danica, unfortunately, rarely shows us who she is, and that's really disappointing because I really, really wanted to like and connect with her. I know that that was a lot of kind of negative stuff, so I want to go back into positives. Something that absolutely remained top-notch from the last one, the humor and the jokes and the wit. Just, oh, so good. Most of these tabs are jokes that I really, really loved. Who are you? Zaf spluttered. The bloody voice police? I hope next time you're in the shower, you think of 70 things you could have said just then that would have been way better than voice police. These feel like real people, and the jokes really help with that. I was not at all disappointed on the joke front. Top notch, A+, 10 out of 10. Read it because jokes are good. Yeah. There are several really big, important ideas about romance and relationships in this book that I think is just a really good thing for people to hear and read. Things that I wish that I had known Because I kind of mentioned that, you know, Danica has this sort of aversion to being in romantic relationships because her first relationship did not work out, and ultimately she left that relationship feeling like, I myself am not adequate at being a girlfriend. There is something wired wrong with me. That really resonated with me because I struggled with that for a while. It's only within the last couple of years that I've really started to do some of that like emotional work. There's something really wonderful that I have marked here that I want to read out. It's so simple and effective, but it's something that people really need to hear. Priorities that don't match, punishments for being yourself. That's not how a relationship should be. People harp on about compatibility for a reason. If you value family and work, you just need someone who feels the same way, someone who admires that about you. If you can't do the sappy shit, you just have to find someone who's okay with that. I know you have a busy life, but you make room for the stuff that matters. If it was worth it and you wanted to, you could make room for a relationship too. What you get out of being loved, it's supposed to be worth the compromise. When it's good, it makes you want to compromise. And like, I'm getting a little emotional thinking about that because it's very, very true. And I feel like it is really unfortunate that like so many people don't know that, because that is like the biggest thing that I wish I could go back and tell my younger self. Like, you are not broken. The people you are with are not in line with the kind of person that you want to be, and that is not your fault. There's literally millions of people out there for you to find and possibly date and possibly be with, and the fact that you have found a couple of people who you are incompatible with does not make you bad or broken. And that's like a really important thing to say, and I love that it's in here. Oh yeah, okay, this tab just says, I cry. Feeling is always worth it. The words were too true to ignore. The family had spent so long numb with grief. Now the idea of stifling his emotions on purpose felt like a sin. He couldn't do it. And maybe that was okay, because things couldn't grow without water or light. And like, it was just so f***ing refreshing to read. Because obviously, when you have characters that go through trauma, when you have people who go through trauma even, it's very understandable that they want to numb themselves from the world so that, you know, you never get hurt again. And it's just really lovely that we have this extremely masculine character talking very openly about shutting yourself off from feeling does nothing but a disservice to you and the life that you're living. I don't think I'd ever really heard it phrased in such a compelling way. Those lessons are hard to learn, and for some reason we don't teach them very often. And that's really sad. One of Zaf's main qualities that I can't believe I haven't mentioned up to this point is that he loves reading romance novels. First of all, very endearing quality. You have good taste, sir. There's a scene where he explains why he loves romance novels and like the power that they have for him. And the way that she articulated that was so spot on and like so accurate, especially for me and why I read so many of them, that like I cried. It's also specifically like related to his experiences, and it felt just so genuine and sincere, and I really loved it. It was one of my favorite parts of the book. I feel like a lot of people think, oh, romance novels are just really silly things, instead of like, romance novels are a genre of book just like anything else with its own tropes and people's own reasons for reading them. And yeah, there are bad ones, but there are also terrible science fiction books out there. There are also terrible crime books. It's just like any other genre. One other small thing that I just remembered, she tells him like, I'm not interested in relationships. Romance is not my thing. And he basically says like, I can't remember what the term is, but does that mean you like don't experience that kind of attraction? And she's like, oh, you mean aromantic. This is a romance novel. And she like actually said the word aromantic, and that was just really wonderful. Ace validation is something that we need more of. We need people looking up those terms if they don't know them. I love that stuff like that gets included in these books. There's really only one other issue that I had with the book, and it's not quite as big as the whole I didn't really feel like I knew who Danica Brown was by the end of the book. Like, not as big an issue as that. I want to talk about the bisexuality. It did not really resonate with me, and I want to explain why that is. But I also want to preface that by saying a couple of things. I'm going to do my best to make it not sound like I'm gatekeeping, But if you think that I start to wander into that territory, please feel free to tell me in the comments. God knows there's enough gatekeeping for bisexuals as it is. There's never going to be a single universal bisexual experience, okay? We're all just way too different. And I recognize that me as a white bisexual woman, my experience is going to be very different from a black bisexual woman. Just because I didn't connect with it doesn't mean that somebody else couldn't find it incredibly validating and relatable. I have no problem whatsoever with the fact that she gets with a guy in this book. Bisexual women are sometimes attracted to men. It doesn't make their bisexuality invalid. It doesn't make them not really queer, etc., etc. I never felt like for a single moment Hibbert, or, you know, just like the book itself, was saying that Dani wasn't valid as a queer person. She's obviously very, very good at writing about female sexual attraction to men, and when writing from the perspective of male characters, men's sexual attraction to women. The thing is that there is like almost zero talk about Dani's attraction to women. Part of the reason that Dani wants a new friend with benefits is that she has just recently finished a fling that she had with a friend of hers who is a female professor at the university that she works at as well. But with the exception of that and literally one line that we don't even hear from Danica's own mouth, but we hear it secondhand after the fact from Zephyr, the universal sapphic experience of wanting to sleep with Janelle Monáe, because yes, we do. There might not be a universal bisexual experience, but the universal sapphic experience is that we all want to sleep with Janelle Monáe because she's wonderful and super hot. That is spot on. But literally with that one exception, there is no mention of Dani finding women attractive. A lot of people think of bisexuality as you're half straight and you're half gay, and that's it. But like, they don't really grasp that that's not how it works. You are attracted to the people that you're attracted to all the time. You don't switch, you don't alternate. It's something that is its own existing thing. This is not really the video to explain this concept, but like a good example is how Garnet and Steven Universe is obviously a metaphor for transness and a trans experience as well, but I think it's also a good kind of way to illustrate like the nature of bisexuality or pansexuality. Garnet is not like Ruby and Sapphire in a trench coat pretending to be like one thing. Ruby and Sapphire formed together to make a whole individual unit. And like, I think that's just something that people don't usually get or understand. They think of it in very binary terms. And unfortunately, that's a little bit what this feels like. Danica's bisexuality is an element of her character that you can entirely remove from the book, and there's almost no difference to the plot, with the exception of that one female professor. Quite frankly, I find it completely unbelievable that Danica Brown doesn't have some kind of queer community and queer friend group. Dani is a black bisexual witch, for f***'s sake, and I know people like that, and there is no way. I mean, I have straight friends. My whole family is straight, you know? Like, I'm the queer person in those particular circles, but I also have a really large queer community and group of friends. Queer people just kind of naturally find each other, even without realizing it, but queer people also actively seek out other people who are also queer. It's just a thing humans do in general. I think us Americans have a tendency to think that because the UK has universal healthcare that they're like so much better about queer issues than we are. They're not. The UK can be really homophobic and really transphobic. There is talk about Dani's race in terms of it's very difficult for Black women to get recognized for their achievements and whatnot. And I think that there was absence of the understanding that when you add queerness on top of that, it makes it even more complicated. I'm saying this stuff about the bisexuality not because I want to discourage her from ever writing queer characters again. It's more that I want to suggest that the attraction to men that she is so good at writing is really, at its core, not all that different from the sexual attraction that bisexual women who are attracted to other women experience for, you know, women or other people in general. Ultimately, humans are humans. And that's kind of what it comes down to when your bi or pansexuality means that, you know, you're attracted to many different types of genders. I know that she is entirely capable of learning and adjusting and growing. For example, at the beginning of the book, in the acknowledgement section, she thanks not one, but 3 people at least for providing her specific guidance on how to authentically write Zephyr's experience. I know that she could do the same with bisexuality or with queerness in general. I want to clarify that I know talking about these big issues that I had for so long kind of gives the impression that I didn't like the book. Not at all true. I think it's a really good romance novel. All of the positive things that I had to say about it are still absolutely true. But I also want to be honest about some of the things that kind of fell short for me, because I love Talia Hibbert's writing and I know that she will get better. I know that she'll learn, and I know she will continue to write really great books, and I'm gonna be there reading those books. I think that about does it. I have filmed for a ridiculously long amount of time because it's been many a week since I filmed a video by myself. So anyway, I'm ready to be done. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. In the comments below, let me know if you think you're going to read it, or if you've already read it, please let me know what you think. And subscribe to The Princess and the Scrivener for more videos on Disney, intersectional feminism, pop culture critiques, book reviews, and more. One of us will see you real soon. She is a 27-year-old literature professor who is also studying to get her PD. Why can't I say the word PhD?